So he pulled a book from under his pillow. Let me tell you, it was not much of a story. A bunch of trucks lived together and crashed into each other. That's all, and I'm not even kidding. But my brother loved it. As I read, he crashed his trucks together 2 by 2 and then tucked them under the covers to go to sleep. When I was finished, he thanked me. So there he likes to sleep with all those trucks lined up on his bed. You're welcome, I said, surprised, and then I looked at him, really looked at him. Usually he looks like a puppy to me, little and round and always wiggling. But tonight, stretched out long in his big boy bed with one of Mitchell's old baseball caps on, he looked like a boy. There he is with the baseball cap on. Mitchell is their neighbor. So he looked like a boy, which meant our family didn't have a baby in it anymore. My dad held the phone up when I came into the living room. Would you like to tell them, Clementine? He asked. I shook my head. You do it. I flopped onto the couch and listened. My mom sat down beside me and wrapped my curls around her fingers. It's wonderful. Yes, yes, July. Wonderful, my dad was saying. She feels fine. Yes, it's wonderful. And then he said, it's wonderful 100 more times. Finally, my dad handed the phone to me. Hi, I said, and then nothing else came out. Especially not, it's wonderful. So you're going to be a big sister again, my grandmother's voice said. I guess, I said. Well, I'd say this new baby is very lucky, Gram said. You are an excellent big sister. Luckily, you don't take after your father at all in that respect. I sat up. What do you mean? Well, my grandmother said, and I could tell I was in for a long, juicy story. I suddenly wished Florida wasn't 2,000 miles away so I could sit beside her while she told it. Well, she said again, your father was 4 years old when Frank was born. Just like me, I interrupted. I was 4 when Spinach was born. Well, that's right, but your father was a very different kind of 4-year-old than you were. He was a hellion, that boy. He was practically feral. Your father, Clementine, was a 4-year-old maniac. You, on the other hand, have always shown immensely good sense. That was the first time in my entire life I'd ever heard anyone say I showed good sense. Would you say that again, Gram? I asked, really loud. I'm going to put you on speakerphone now. I'd be happy to, dear, my grandmother said. You always showed such good sense around your little brother. Right from the beginning, you were very careful with him, very protective of him. So there she is, putting the phone on speaker so everyone else in the room can hear it, what the grandmother's saying. I was? I don't remember that. Oh yes, my grandmother said. You were a wonderful big sister, not like your father at all. Why? What did he do? I looked over at my father. He made an innocent face and threw his hands up. Gracious, what didn't he do? My grandmother's laughter filled our apartment. We didn't think your Uncle Frank would live to see his first birthday. Your father was absolutely intent on getting rid of him from the day we brought him home from the hospital. I couldn't turn my back for a second. One time he filled up the baby carriage with pine cones. So you couldn't put Uncle Frank in it? Oh no, honey, Uncle Frank was already in the baby carriage, my grandmother said. We had to dig him out. Now, wait a minute, my dad began, but my grandmother was just getting warmed up. Another time I found him trying to put the baby in the dryer. He said his diaper was wet. Thank goodness I got there before he figured out how to turn it on. My father shook his head with a sad face. She's a little crazy, he mouthed. It's all that Florida sun. My mother bent over the counter, scribbling something. And then there was the time with the garden hose, my grandmother said. Now that was really... My dad sprang over and grabbed the phone and stabbed off the speaker button. Well now, I'm sure we don't need to go filling her head with any more stories, he said to my grandmother. How's the weather down there these days? My mother tugged on my father's sleeve and held up her pad of paper. Lucky Legs 11, driving the golf cart, she had written in big capital letters. She'd scribbled in big capital letters with about 300 exclamation marks all around the page. My father signaled, later to my mother, then said into the phone, "Well, we've had a big day here, lots of excitement. I think we'd better say goodnight now. Love to you and Pop." And he hung up before anybody could get into any more trouble. I headed into my room and took out a notebook. And she wrote a letter to her grandma and grandpa. "Dear Gram and Pop, how are you? I am fine. Well, not so fine. I am still looking for the good part about a new baby. Could you tell me more about what a good sister I was, about how I was so protective and showed good," and then she inserts, immensely good sense. You can write on the back of this letter, and also I will send some more paper so you can write a lot. Love, your granddaughter, the only one you have. For now, Clementine. P.S. Also, I lost your hat, and I'm very sorry. P.P.S. But I will find it. See all her exclamation points. P.P.P.S. Have you caught Mrs. Grocky cheating at bingo yet? And that's the end of chapter 3.